Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is the Upper Tier Podcast, and joining me tonight, our resident referee, Mark. How are we, Mark?
How's it going, Niall? Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, not a bother. Welcome anytime. Tonight we said we'd do a special show. Obviously, the season has concluded, but obviously the Champions League finals coming up. But we said we'd do a special show. Saipan,
Yeah.
20 years on. It's 20th anniversary. Can you believe 20 years
I
since
actually
Saipan?
can't. It's actually flying in, man, isn't it? Like, when you think
Scary,
of it.
scary.
I was in Benildes. You remember that place? I was in Benildes that year.
Absolutely. So, what were you? Would you have been doing your leaving cert that year, or what were you doing?
I would have been in fifth year.
So the year before your leaving cert.
Yeah, year
That's
before the
mad.
leaving, yeah.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do with this episode, obviously some of our viewers may not be familiar with Saipan and the whole background to it, because obviously not
Yeah,
all our viewers and subscribers are Irish. But
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure if there's United fans on here, they would remember it well and stuff like that. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back 20 years and set the scene, and set it in kind of a different way, because I wanted to discuss at the time we had a really, really good Ireland squad,
Mm.
and like they were scoring goals as well. This wasn't like the old school like Jack Charlton Ireland squad. There's some really good ballers in this
Yeah,
squad.
yeah.
And we were going into the tournament, I suppose, and we'll go down through them and stuff like that shortly. But we were going into the tournament with high hopes of doing really, really well.
Mm.
Um, and then, of course, all this stuff fell apart and stuff like that. So what I said was we jump on tonight, set the scene, go back 20 years, like Marty McFly and Doc Brown in the DeLorean,
Yeah.
go back 20 years, talk about what happened there and then, set the scene kind of. And then
Mm.
what we do is we jump 20 years forward and sort of how do we feel about it now
Yeah,
when everything
yeah.
that's transpired with the FAI and all the other stuff that has happened? How do we feel about it
Champagne
now? And
football.
yeah, all that kind of stuff. So like, it should be interesting. So I was supposed to go back and set the scene. I mean, if you look at, for instance, before we get into the qualifiers and of course the playoff to make it, and what we did through the group, um, this was the squad. So just to familiarise ourselves
Yeah.
again, some top names on this: goalkeeper Shay Gibbon, Alan Kelly, Dean Coyley.
Mm.
There's three good goalkeepers that you'd find around that time, all
Yeah.
excellent goalkeepers. In defence, Steve Staunton, Ian Hart, Richard Dunn, Gary Breen, Andy O'Brien, Kenny Cunningham, Gary Kelly, and Steve Finnan.
Yeah.
Like that's a,
Unbelievable, isn't
that,
it?
that's a heck of a list of
Yeah.
defenders,
Like,
isn't it, for an Irish
Ian
squad?
Hart, I reckon, scored a good few goals in them qualifiers from free kicks and stuff. And
Yeah,
we got a lot of goals from corners back in the day. Hart whipping them in. You've got, the likes of Dunn and Breen coming up from the back as well. So, we scored a lot of goals from that way. Staunton, and I know you're going to mention Niall Quinn, were probably, on their way out of the squad at that stage. But they were still good, experienced players to have around the younger lads there, like Duffer and Keane and stuff like that,
yeah. And that was the secret to the success of the squad at the time, where we had some experience blended with some youth that was coming through as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Um,
Good
but when you
mix.
when you when you go down through this list as well, this list of players, a lot of these players were playing like high level football in the Premier League at the time
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Like they weren't like this wasn't where like we had one or two lads in the Premier League and the rest were all championship guys or whatever it was,
yeah,
or foreign
exactly.
guys. Like we'd really top players at the time. Midfield: Mark Kinsler, Matt Holland, Jason McAteer, Kevin Kilbane, Mark Kennedy, Lee Carsley, and Roy Keane.
Yeah.
Again, it's a solid
There's
midfield.
some good players in there. Some
Yeah,
tough tackling players. Some players with a bit of pizzazz about them as well.
yeah.
Like, and it's funny you mentioned Kilban there. Like, how long did he play for? He must have had over 100 caps. Played
Yeah,
on the left wing, then moved to left full back and stuff like
yeah,
that. But he was a player that would always show up week in, week out. People
yeah.
I know obviously Zinedine Kilban and he got slagged, but
Mm.
he kind of endeared himself to the Irish fans, didn't he?
Yeah, and even guys like Lee Carsley. Remember Lee Carsley? Lee
Yeah,
Carsley was that stalwart in midfield, I think, for
yeah,
Everton at the time. Absolutely
yeah. He
ran
would have
that
been.
Everton midfield at the time. It was
Yeah,
unbelievable. Of course, we don't need to talk about Roy Keane and what Roy Keane was doing at United. He was
yeah.
unbelievable.
But then,
Oh,
you have Mark Kinsler. He would have been captain of Charlton Athletic at the time, and they would have
that's
been the
right.
kind of mainstay in the Premier League at that stage.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like you said, even going back to the keepers, Dean Coyley would have been third choice. He was Charlton's first choice. He was playing week in, week out in the Premier League. Something
yeah.
that's probably missing from a lot of the players now in the current
Mm.
squad.
Yeah, and I know when I hit you up on WhatsApp the other day to do this episode, the first guy you mentioned, of course, was Matty Holland.
Yeah.
When we spoke about Roy Keane going home
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
interesting. And of course, up front then, strikers Niall Quinn, Robbie Keane, Damien Duff, Clinton Morrison, and David Connolly.
Yeah.
Like,
Isn't
it's
it
a
mad?
nice blend.
Isn't it mad? In 1990, Niall Quinn was put down as third choice keeper to bring him out in the squad to, kind of get through a loophole in the ruling, and then obviously a striker in 94 and then 2002 World Cup.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But yeah, like you said, even the likes of David Connolly and stuff there, he used to banging goals in the Premier League and stuff. So and obviously Robbie Keane, top goal scorer in Irish history. So yeah, it was some squad, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And Duffer as well. He was
Oh man,
unbelievable.
lethal.
Duffer
Sure,
was mad, wasn't he? Because you remember Duffer, like after 5 minutes in the match, he always looked knackered.
Yeah,
Some
the
engine
hands
on him.
beyond the hips and all,
Some
and he
engine
looked
on him,
like.
yeah.
I remember
shattered.
I remember being at the Stretford End watching him for Blackburn against United, and he looked absolutely jaded, walking over to take corners and stuff,
Yeah.
But I think, wasn't it, he would have got to move to Chelsea in 2003, so it was only a year after that, the World Cup. So, he was something special, We haven't really seen anyone like him since, have we now?
Yeah. And of course, Clinton we see these days on Sky Sports as a pundit and stuff like that. I loved him the other day going in on Merson with the stuff Merson was talking about. And I tell you, he didn't give an inch either. He wasn't letting it go.
No.
He was back and forward at Merson all the time. Really liked that about Clinton. Was always a warrior for us, Always doing as much as he could, Let's get into the qualifiers. I mean, we had a tough group really with Holland, Portugal, Estonia, Cyprus, and Andorra. Holland and Portugal obviously would have been the favourites and stuff like that to go through. But we started out with 2 draws, Holland and Portugal, and these were away.
Yeah, no, it's always a good start when that happens, because when you look at the group, you think, right, we'll try take our points against Cyprus and Andorra, and whatever happens against Portugal and Holland, that's a bonus. But to get 2 draws away from home is a dream start to the campaign, especially when you're looking at the time, Portugal had the likes of Luis Figo, Rui Costa, really, really decent players. And to get that draw, it was vital in the campaign for the confidence going forward for the rest of the group then.
Yeah, absolutely. So then Cyprus, Andorra, and Estonia, home and away, we did fine. Not a problem. And then it came down. We drew with Portugal then as well. And the funny enough, these draws with these teams, some of these we had actually taken the lead. And they were chasing the game to come back in. I mentioned the Portugal game, I think it was, we had taken an early lead or something like that.
Well, it was a time that McCarthy was trying to get them to play football, because if you're a manager and you're looking to play against Ireland, you always thought about the long ball over the top, the usual Route 1 football. But we started, because we had Keane and Duffer there, there was, and like I said, even Neil Hart, he was a great baller coming up from the back. Gary Kelly probably was losing his legs a bit on the right-hand side, but we were always good on the ball. And it was great from a fan's point of view, because you were excited going to Lansdowne Road. It wasn't, like I said, the Route 1 football. It was time to see football playing on the ground again,
Yeah. And then, of course, Jason McAteer pops up at the goal against Holland, which really got us through to, got us into the qualifier.
Yeah. Do you remember Keane, literally only 3 minutes into the game, absolutely takes Mark himself like that? I think that set the tone. That got the crowd on their feet, and that set the tone for the game then,
Yeah, that was a massive result.
Oh, unbelievable. I think Stevie Finnan played the ball across, didn't he? And it was like a half volley by McAteer, by Van der Sar. Just unbelievable. I remember watching it at home in Dundrum when I was living in Roseau, my man and dad's house at the time, and just goosebumps.
Yeah, absolutely.
But McAteer's been living off that goal for the last 20 years, so fair play to him.
Not a bad goal to live off, is it?
No, 2 right, half volley, top corner.
Not a bad
goal. The old Lansdowne Road, where there used to be a great atmosphere as well. Remember the old schoolboy tickets for a £5?
And can be quite blustery.
Yeah, exactly.
Can be quite blustery, because it was quite open back then as well.
Oh, it was, absolutely.
So then we went and we drew Iran in the knockout qualifier, if you like. We won 2-0 at home and we lost 1-0 away. So we went 2-1. And this is, like I often say to people as well, it's a great time in the country when the Irish team is doing well, because everyone is upbeat, everyone is happy.
Absolutely.
There's a buzz about the place and stuff like that when we qualify for these and stuff like that.
It's probably like yourself now. We had the house, the flags out, the buntons, everything. Do you know what I mean? It was great crack, you know. And it even people who aren't interested in football get interested for them few weeks of a World Cup or a European Championship, and that's great, you know.
Yeah, I always remember even when the games were on and stuff like that, because I remember when they showed the actual World Cup games then. Like even when we were working, I was working in a factory at the time and stuff like that. We'd let the lads off to watch the games. We put the tellies in the canteen and all, and the lads would work up the hours and stuff like that. It was brilliant. And I remember I was in a canteen full of lads that day, and like there must have been about 200 people in the canteen when Keane scored the goal and stuff like that, and that place just erupted. And that cartwheel celebration, which always I'm sure put the shivers up Mick McCarthy as much as the rest of us when he did it, like because it was probably the worst cartwheel in the business, I'd say.
Yeah, that's it. But you remember even the Cameroon game? Remember it was something mad, like a 7 or an 8 a.m. kickoff, like, you know. And I remember watching the IGB where my dad used to play his football in the bar there, and
the old pitch and putt.
The old pitch and putt was over there, and they were actually they were serving breakfast that morning and all, but obviously everyone was supping as well, you know. But
actually, very sad to see the IGB the way it is now, isn't it? Because it's just closed up and
it's lying idle the last. It's actually closed
years
late in I think it was early 2003, so it's nearly 20 years closed. But I believe they're building a school on it now next year, so.
Yeah, that's good. It should be yours or something because it's a great site as well. Bank slap there as well. So great catchment area. But before we get into the actual games, let's talk about, of course, the preparation went as it goes and stuff like that. And it's fair to say that the relationship between Mick McCarthy and Roy Keane was kind of edgy anyway, to say the least, before anything kicked off. So then they head out to Saipan. And Keane arrives, and I remember this to a T. He was absolutely furious. He was first of all furious that the boys were sitting in business class and the FAI guys were sitting in first class. So that didn't sit well with him at all.
That doesn't surprise me, Niall, because if you go even back to '94, they had I think it was when they were playing, was it before the Mexico game? They had the Ireland team staying in the same hotel as the Irish fans. This is. Like you won't get that from any other football federation around the world, the International Football Federation. Like having them in, having the big wigs in first class and the players back now, and even in '94, not to the World Cup, but to the qualifiers. Like the Irish players were traveling on the same planes as the fans going to some of the qualifiers and all. You're looking at it going, it's ridiculous, like.
And I suppose the difficulty with Roy Keane as well, and it's not necessarily a difficulty with him, because he was at Man United, and I'm sure this was Man United who were very, very successful. This was top-notch Man United, if you like. Like everything, preparation and everything at United would be meticulous in terms of flights, hotels, kit, equipment, everything and all.
And not only that, we moved into our new state-of-the-art training complex, Carrington, in the year 2000. So he would have been training in that for the 2 years before the World Cup. And then obviously he rocks up in Saipan. He's training in a car park with no footballs. And he's looking going, lads, what's the crack here? This is the biggest tournament in the world. We're an absolute joke, like.
Yeah, so what he did was he raised issues, obviously. He raised issues about equipment. I think they were saying at one stage he had to borrow balls and all or something like that.
Yeah, apparently, now I don't know how true this is. I heard McAteer saying the story that there was a few young lads playing football and they had to borrow the football off the young lads to have a kick about it.
Yeah. Now we should preface this first of all by saying that this wasn't the Ireland camp. This was like a 3-day or a 4-day stop.
Yeah, exactly. Before they went to, but even so. Yeah, so, like, could you imagine the English squad, the Brazil squad, the German squad doing something like that? You know, you have to set standards, and obviously we knew Roy was, his standards even at United were so high, but you have to look up to that and appreciate that. But like I said, the FAI were an amateur organisation. Like they're meant to be professional, but it was ran by amateurs, and even like we seen with John Delaney, and remember Pat Hickey during that Olympics, they were selling the Irish tickets in the black market over there, and they got caught for it just to
but not even that. When you think about the money they were going to earn from this tournament, qualifying for the final stages of a World Cup would have been massive injection of money into.
Absolutely. And Niall, when you think about it, We're the only country in the world that's ever had a sponsor on the replica jersey. So we had Opel, we had Aircom, we had Tree, wasn't it? Like
Yeah,
there was big bucks played by sponsors. You
yeah,
know, you
absolutely.
won't England. No one else had these sponsors on their replica jersey, but we did. So there was money there. Now we all know now where it went, but at the time, and it wasn't going to grassroots football. It wasn't going to the senior team. So we didn't know where it was going at the time, but we certainly know where it went now.
Yeah. The odd fan got a point out of it, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, and a toy and a green toy from
But
Mr. Delaney. But go
yeah, but
ahead.
obviously, Roy Keane raised these issues, and he didn't feel like he got, so let's say, the response that he wanted.
Yeah,
So he did an interview. He told the Irish Times, did an interview with the Irish Times, and he said, "Here's his quote from it." He said, "You wonder why players get injured. Well, playing on a surface like that, it's rock hard. One or two of the lads have picked up injuries, but we're the Irish team. It's a laugh and a joke."
yeah,
That was
yeah.
his comment directly to the Irish Times, right? Now, when this broke out, this incensed Mick McCarthy that Roy had gone to. Well, it's not, I wouldn't say Roy went to them. Obviously, the Irish Times would have been interviewing players,
Yeah, yeah,
and Roy
exactly.
just said what had to be said, basically.
Yeah,
Okay, so this incensed Mick McCarthy greatly, and he decided to question Keane about it, But I think this is where it takes a sharp turn right, basically, because in a team meeting, McCarthy brought out the article,
yeah,
and he basically he tore into Keane in front of all the lads, which really questions Keane's credibility, really. Then
yeah,
as
exactly.
as a as part of the squad, basically, as you say,
And
um,
I think in that meeting, obviously some things were said in the heat of the moment, but I think other things probably had to be said. Things were boiling up probably from 1994 right up until this meeting in 2002,
yeah,
and it all just came to a head then. And listen, if you're in that meeting and McCarthy and Keane are going at it, you're kind of sitting back, keeping your mouth shut. You're not going to say anything. You know, we've
yeah.
heard, over the years that the likes of Clinton Morrison and Gary Breen approached Roy Keane after in private and said, "Listen, we agree with you," but they weren't saying it in front of the manager. And listen, that's a fair enough point. You're not going to want to put your own head on the chopping block, because you've made it this far.
Mm.
Could be the only opportunity you ever get to play at the World Cup, so you're not going to mess that opportunity up.
Yeah, and I suppose it was a bit hurtful on Roy as well, because Roy probably would have expected the boys to row in with him.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
they
Like,
but they kind of didn't. They seemed. I know if you remember afterwards, and we get into a little bit more here of this row that broke out as well. But if you remember afterwards, they eventually rolled out some of the boys into interviews. If you remember, like
oh
panels
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff like that,
Quinn
and they
and
were kind
Staunton
of
were there.
throwing Roy a little bit under the
Yeah.
bus and stuff like that, which I
Yeah,
thought was
but
bad form.
and the players that did were the players that actually had played with Mick McCarthy when he was playing with the senior team. Like I said, the
Yeah,
likes of Staunton and Quinn, so they
yeah,
would have been pally with him, so they wouldn't have probably minded going out more so than probably the likes of the younger lads like a Duff or a Keane or a Clinton Morrison or something like that.
well, they probably knew as well how many more World Cups were they going to get to and stuff
That
like that. These were
exactly,
senior
that's the
boys, you know what I
thing,
mean?
yeah.
So yeah, it's
But
really
I think,
important. But
if I remember as well, one of the things that McCarthy brought up was that he said Keane had faked some injuries not to appear.
for the
Now
second
listen,
leg against Iran, for the
yeah.
second leg
So,
against Iran, yeah.
he was saying that Ferguson had put him up to, because I think it was it who would we have been going for the lead that say 2002? But anyway, he obviously Roy Keane didn't take very well to that, and you wouldn't do it, especially with the
Yeah,
with the passion that he has as a
yeah.
captain of both club and country. So that was one thing that really irritated him at the time.
Yeah, I remember at the time as well. Fergie, I know Roy had been picking up a couple of injuries and stuff, hadn't he? And I know Fergie was heavily weighting towards the fact where he didn't want him involved in international
Yeah,
football. He wanted him at United and stuff like that.
yeah,
And that's always the head to head between
absolutely.
like a club and a country manager and
Yeah,
stuff like international manager. But he went on this verbal tirade. This is when the tough Corkness came out in Roy, and he turned around and he said to McCarthy, I didn't rate you as a player. I don't rate you as a manager, and I don't rate you as a person.
yeah,
And I think when that comes out, and he stood by it as well. He says I will not tolerate the level of abuse that was thrown at me. So I sent him home. That was McCarthy's response
yeah,
to it.
yeah, yeah.
So I know there was a meeting. There was a meeting afterwards. I think in a hotel room, and Darren has spoke to me about this meeting because Darren actually knows. you can't say anything, but Darren, if he had to come on tonight, knows a person who was in that hotel room when that conversation went down. And
Oh,
Darren has some interesting stories on that, all right, in
uh,
terms of McCarthy and Roy and stuff like that.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
Interesting. So obviously this created huge controversy because obviously Roy Keane got on basically the next plane, and before we knew it, he was home in Manchester walking the
walking the
Labradors,
dog. Yeah, yeah,
walking the
yeah,
Labradors, absolutely bursting through endless amounts of journalists and
yeah.
TV cameras and stuff like that and all.
The old raincoat and
Um,
paddy cap on.
yeah, and this became a huge thing to the point where I think they were looking for Bertie to get involved at the time and try
Yeah,
and try and
yeah.
put this
Broke or
together and get
something.
him
Yeah,
back out on a plane. And I think it kind of happened. If I'm right, did it happen over kind of a weekend? And they were hoping
yeah.
to get him back out there by the Monday and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the
Um,
rumors started probably circulating on the Friday morning. I remember in school, and you hear whispers, and then it's
yeah,
all gone around the school, and even the teachers and all are talking about. It, and you're like, yeah,
yeah.
this is gonna be exciting. Couldn't get
Mm.
wait to get home, watch the 6-1 news, and then he was meant to be
Yeah.
flying back out on the Sunday evening or Monday morning, I think it was.
And we were sure he was going to go back out because obviously
Yeah,
he was so pivotal to the team because in terms of level, he was arguably the highest level player in the team, really, wasn't
yeah, yeah,
he?
yeah. Without a shadow
In
of a doubt.
terms of club football and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So I think as a nation we were shocked, but we kind of thought, actually, someone will talk to him. This is an argument.
yeah,
Mick might get on the phone. We'll get this sorted out. He'll be back out there. He's hardly
yeah,
going to walk away from the opportunity for World Cup. He's hardly going to desert the nation. He's hardly going
yeah.
to desert his team. And this
Little
was
did we
this
know.
this was this was headline after headline
Mm,
after headline. But obviously it didn't happen.
yeah,
Um, so if you remember, then if we go down into the tournament took off then and Roy was gone, so I'd imagine it was a tough one
yeah.
to take because he was so pivotal in the team and stuff like that. He's an absolute
Absolutely.
warrior, and he would
And
have
after
spun our
all
lads
that,
around him.
yeah, and even of course after all that, the morale in the camp is going to be so kind of low. You're trying to prepare for a World Cup, but you have all this drama happening behind the scenes that, like I said, no other country had to endure at the time.
Mm,
So to go into that Cameroon game and get something out of it was so vital,
yeah,
And it just happened to be the man who stepped up to the plate was the man who kind of took his position in the team.
yeah,
Matty Holland with that long range shot into the bottom corner.
yeah, absolutely. And as we know, then I mean, if you look at they drew with Cameroon and drew with Germany.
Yeah,
Robbie Keane's goal in injury time, we'll never forget, of course.
unbelievable.
And then we beat Saudi Arabia. And then we drew with
3-0.
Spain, but we went out on penalties,
Oh, I
which
remember it well
which is
because
which
yeah,
is kind of a sickener. Ireland and penalties are just synonymous with
yeah.
each other, really, aren't they? When you
But
think about it.
do you know what really sticks out in my mind from that game is how we won the penalty in normal time. Remember Herrera was reefing the jersey off Quinn, and I had
Yeah,
never seen that given in my life
yeah.
on a big stage. And the referee gave a penalty, and all the Spanish players are kind of in shock because they do that week in, week out in the league, and they were doing it in the tournament and all. But the referee actually punished them and awarded us a penalty. It was
I'm,
brilliant.
I'm sure if you were acting like me, you were pacing the floor because if you remember, that penalty felt like it took a lifetime as well.
Oh yeah, without a
Um,
doubt. And then
yeah,
even in the penalty shootout, Mendieta scored the vital penalty, and given dive to the right. Mendieta went
mm,
straight down the middle, and the ball missed Given's foot by like millimeters and just went in. It was just
mm.
soul destroying, soul
And
destroying.
and at the time, if I'm right, was Mendy at Middlesbrough at the time? Had he gone there at that stage?
2002, he might have actually. Yeah, would he have?
Because he did, yeah, because he was, wasn't it? Gaxal
Yeah,
Mendieta, yeah, he was. I think he was at Borough. I'm not sure whether he was there at that time, but he played for Middlesbrough actually. Very good
yeah,
player for Middlesbrough actually.
yeah, yeah,
But when we look back at the way the final phases went, then obviously Spain got knocked out by South Korea on penalties, and of
yeah,
course
yeah,
everyone as Ireland fans we became South Korean fans, didn't we? Because that's
yeah,
what we
yeah,
do with the
yeah,
underdogs and stuff like that. And then of course Germany beat South Korea in the semis, and then Germany were beaten by Brazil.
with Brazil, yeah, yeah,
So when we look back at that tournament, it was a massive missed opportunity for Ireland when you think about it, the way it ended up
yeah,
going. Certainly, the purest of football fans out there, especially Irish fans, would say, well, if Keane was in the team, we'd be a much better team, and that's without argument.
yeah.
And who knows what might have happened in that tournament then? Because I
Yeah.
certainly would have fancied us against South Korea.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
and we'd already played against Germany. I think Germany at the time had Ballack in the team and all. They had some really
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
players. But like we had played Germany, we had locked horns with Germany in the
Yeah.
past, and we've done okay. So who knows what might have happened there? So like,
And it would have been our first semi-final in our
yeah,
history, like, and listen, it's a flip of a coin. It's who
yeah,
has the most bottle.
and I think it's kind of like the unknown quantity there of what might have been in that tournament.
Yeah,
For like a
yeah.
small little nation like ours, with such a
Look,
small pool of pull and stuff like that.
exactly.
Like,
Like put
and
it this way: if we had faced Germany, the pressure would have been on Germany to win. There would have been no pressure on us. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? Because we would have been the underdogs. So that
yeah,
that would have worked in our favor. Absolutely.
yeah. And I think, as we said, when we went around through the squad that we had there, that's as good a squad that could stand up to any international team and give them a bit of a decent
Yeah,
fight on the
yeah,
pitch and stuff like that.
yeah. Exactly. We
So yeah,
seen that in the group
certainly.
stages.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we find out. I mean, afterwards, then they a report was commissioned into Ireland's preparations in Saipan.
The
Um,
Genesis report, and it
the
wasn't about
Genesis,
Phil Collins.
the Genesis report, yeah, and it wasn't about TNA wrestling either. Um, and the report agreed with many of Keane's criticisms, which I think you can't avoid it really. I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is. That the FAI structure was not conducive to good planning and making a range of recommendations.
There's a
But
shock.
the complete report was never published for legal reasons, obviously.
No,
So
and in the meantime, the secretary of the FAI was let go quietly at the time as well.
yeah,
Not in relation to what happened in Saipan, apparently, but
mm,
you don't
yeah,
have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure that one out.
yeah. The rest we know is history. I mean, obviously Brian Kirk took over from McCarthy, and
Got Keno
Keane
back.
got Keane out back, and he played 67 times for Ireland. Um, Retired, I think he retired from playing at club level in 2006. Um, then in
Yeah, he really
2006,
retired when he went to Celtic, didn't he?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, but 2006, the pair seemed to reconcile. I think if you remember that handshake, I think it's
Oh
the
yeah, what?
longest, widest, furthest away
Yeah,
handshake. I think
yeah.
McCarthy was at Wolves and Keno was at Sunderland.
Sunderland, yeah.
And I remember the build up to the game. If you remember it, like it was like Saipan 2.0,
Yeah,
really. You know
yeah.
what I mean? But
Sky
if you
Sports
remember them
loving it.
shaking hands, like they were saying, they called it like the reconciliation, but they literally never looked at each other. And I've never seen arms stretched out as
Yeah,
much to shake hands.
yeah.
If you look at the actual picture on the internet on Google, the space between the two of them, you could probably put a decent projector screen in
Yeah.
it, to be honest,
But
for lads who shake
do
hands.
you even remember do you remember the handshake was after the Holland game in Lansdowne Road between McCarthy and Keane? It was
Yeah,
literally nothing. Like Keane just wanted to walk by, and McCarthy, obviously all the photographers around. Keane was walking off with his shirt off.
yeah.
McCarthy reached out. He just kind of shook, didn't even look at him.
Handshake,
So
heads the head down, head
yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah.
I think
So
was he topless for that one as well? He was
yeah,
always
yeah,
topless coming off, wasn't
yeah.
he?
He was
That's that
topless
picture.
coming off because he had the
Yeah,
cross. He has a tattoo
that's
of a
right.
cross on his arm
That's
and
right. Yeah,
stuff
he
like
has a
that.
Celtic cross or something, doesn't he? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah, I remember that. He just had the head down. His chin was nearly scraping the dirt up
yeah,
off the grass, nearly walking by him. Like
yeah.
he was
And
literally trying to avoid him.
it should have been like elation at the time because you just have to get through to the World Cup.
Yeah,
Great
absolutely.
result against Holland at home.
Yeah. So now that we look back, that's the same for our viewers. We've set
Yeah,
the scene there. We're in the final act of this play now, which is really on the episode. Is we're 20 years on now. How do you feel about this now, 20 years on? Because I remember, if we remember back to that time, Keane was enemy number one, basically. I
yeah,
mean, he had let down his squad, he had let down his country. I remember he was being vilified and stuff like that in the press and everything and all.
yeah,
Like he
yeah,
was this turncoat, this devil and all. He didn't care about international football. He was all about him. There was even stories coming out that Alex Ferguson had advised him not to go back and all because he
yeah,
wanted him for club football to be absolutely perfect and healthy and
yeah.
give up. And we've seen that in the past where they advised him
Which is
international.
fair enough from a club manager. They're always going to
Yeah,
protect their
and
players.
especially at a time in Keane's career as well, because as he said, he was starting to pick up a few knocks and stuff like
Mm,
that. And obviously, Fergie was trying to wrap him up with cotton wool because he
yeah,
was he was still playing at a very very high level at the time.
We only got
So
another few years out of him after that, didn't we? Like when you think of it, so
yeah, absolutely. So what you're feeling now, 20 years on? I mean, obviously it's the anniversary, 20 years on, and it's.
it,
I think in some respects, I think he's been he's being justified in what happened now and stuff like
yeah,
that. And I don't think he's perceived the same way. But
no,
there's still a big split in the fan base and how they
there
think
is.
about it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, there is. Listen, I see it from 2 points of view. Obviously, I'd agree with Roy 100% about the conditions and about the setup of the FAI at the time. Like I said, it was amateurish. And the one thing I will say, if I had been Roy Keane, I wouldn't have done the interview with the Irish Times. I think that might have, you know, soured it a little bit more. Obviously, the team meeting, you know, like I said, there was probably lads there that didn't want to kind of, you know, raise their concerns themselves. So Roy was kind of like the fallout boy slightly, that sort of way.
Yeah, I think
So
players have turned around and said at that team meeting before anything kicked off, they could feel the tension and they knew something was coming. You could cut
yeah,
it with a knife.
but yeah, so like I said, I would be on Roy Kane's side of things because knowing what the setup was like, knowing what the FAI delegates were like at the time, where that money went. Like I said, you go back to '94, you go back to the qualifiers and stuff like that. It was all done on a tight budget, so the money had to go elsewhere. So you'd wonder where it went, but like I said, it's one that you say, it divided the nation at the time, and isn't it mad that 20 years on, people are still divided about this issue as well,
Yeah, I suppose I think the difficulty on some of the points we touched on, this wasn't Ireland's base. This was
Yeah,
kind of like a stop off.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and obviously, if you know the logistics of this place as well, and this is not like I would never defend the FAI in any way,
yeah, yeah,
but this is the logistics of getting stuff there and all. This stuff had gotten sort of misdirected or something like that. It's not that they
yeah.
didn't have the stuff; it just didn't arrive in Saipan. Now, some
And that's
people
it.
would say, "Look, you've months to plan this. What's the problem?" You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
But
But
that for me, surely that first stop off for the squad should have set the tone for the whole tournament. Then that sort of way
yeah,
it should have been first class from the start,
yeah,
where the
mm,
lads had nothing to worry about other than going out onto that pitch and winning games and getting points in the group, and it didn't
yeah,
happen that way. So, like I said, I can see where Roy came from, but also, like I said,
mm,
from the opposite point of view, I didn't agree with Roy coming out and doing the interview with the I can't remember your man's name actually, the journalist, but with the Irish Times that time.
Well, I don't think we're going to mention him, are we? We do know who
Oh,
he is, but we're
oh
hardly going to
yeah,
mention him, are we?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But did he not do it with another lad then? I know he co-wrote the book with and the other lad. I'm thinking, who you were just talking about there. But there was another lad he did an interview with, wasn't
I'd say he did a lot of interviews. To be
there?
honest,
Yeah, yeah.
I'd say he was involved in most newspapers at the time.
Well,
Yeah,
the one journalist you're talking about, yeah, he was obviously the
yeah,
ghostwriter for
yeah,
the first
yeah.
autobiography.
But yeah, I just don't know. Sometimes I look at it and I think, look. I suppose for me at the time it was very easy as well because I was a Liverpool fan, so it was very easy for me to go in on Roy Keane because I think at the time when people were reacting to it, I think a lot of it wasn't necessarily Ireland based, if you like.
Yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah,
like it was like Liverpool fans and other fans probably going in and going, "Oh yeah, Roy Keane, yeah." It was like another hammer to beat them over the
yeah,
head with,
yeah.
basically, kind of thing, you know. What I mean? Oh
So
yeah,
you was have
typical,
Mark Kennedy
typical.
represent news.
Yeah, but like you would hear like, "Oh yeah, typical United player walking out on his country,"
Yeah,
this kind of thing. This is what you
yeah,
would hear and stuff like that. But yeah, I think over time it's still 20 years on. It's still a wound that's kind of still open, isn't it? And it's still very like when you talk to Irish fans, um, they ask themselves always, how could you walk out on your teammates? But we know Roy Keane, he was kind of a lonely guy. He was kind of a guy who rode his own horse and stuff like
yeah.
that.
He's very
Um,
strong-headed, stubborn. Like you
now
said, a
as
bit
we
of a
as
loner,
we
but
know
in the
as we
right
know
way.
yeah, but as we know over the years now, even talking to ex United players and stuff like that, he'd walk through a wall and he'd die for you.
Yeah, yeah,
But it never felt like he was your brother standing beside you.
yeah,
That
yeah,
kind of way. It's kind of
yeah,
weird. Like it's a weird dynamic with him because he's such a dynamic character.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I just think 20 years on, I still think the one thing that hurts me the most is the opportunity that we had that potentially we didn't,
Yeah,
we didn't take advantage of because basically our best player left the squad. Now we'll never know. I mean, we could have got knocked out in the group
yeah,
stage.
it's
Who
buts and
knows? If
maybes.
it's
Yeah,
all if buts and maybes, but I mean, the one thing we could say, if he was there, we would have been a better team. There's no doubt
absolutely,
about it.
absolutely.
But then I don't know if he had a stayed on and that tension was there
It might
still.
have been a different story.
Yeah, because obviously if he had stayed, he still wouldn't have been happy with the way things were done. So I wonder, I suppose the thing is, if we had got to the quarterfinals or the semis and it blew up then, and he walked out then, it probably might have been worse
Worse,
because
yeah, yeah,
we're sort of here reminiscing and thinking about something that we're not sure may or may not have happened.
yeah,
But we're
yeah.
thinking if he had been there, we probably have a better opportunity to get to that stage. And what if it had blown up then and he had buggered off? That would have been
Very true.
terrible.
Well, I
Terrible.
put it. I remember years ago, someone put this point to me. They said, because obviously as a United fan, I was always on Roy's side anyway. But he said, Mark, what if Mick McCarthy had walked out? What would you have done then? He says you might have even got out the group stages because you lose your manager just before the tournament. So that kind of got me thinking, Jesus, yeah,
Yeah, who
you lose a player, and we got through it because we had another squad of 20 players, but we didn't. We wouldn't have had another manager,
that's
to replace
that's
McCarthy.
that's actually a very good dynamic, isn't it? Because like I hadn't even thought of who would have been there with Mick at the time. Was Morris still there at the time?
Was Chris Houghton involved? Was he as his assistant
I think
or?
so, was it? Or was Morris Setter still
No,
there?
Chris
I'm
Hughes.
not.
Yeah, Morris
Chris
Setters would have been there. No,
there.
Morris. No, Morris left when
Morris left.
Jack left. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
in '98. That time
Yeah.
after the Holland game in
Yeah.
Anfield. That time, remember?
That's right. Yeah.
I think who. I remember Chris Houghton was for a while, wasn't he?
Mm, yeah.
Jesus, yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, so but
Well, there
yeah,
wouldn't have been there
some
wouldn't there wouldn't have been a natural step up as you said. So
no,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that
Um,
no, that always stuck in my head. I remember having a chat with one of the lads at a training session, and he said that to me, and I was like, Jesus, yeah. But
chances
obviously,
are
with me
chances
United,
are Roy might have took over as player manager.
yes,
Who
you never
knows?
know. You never know. Get Brian
Like,
Kerr up from the under 21s.
they one thing they would have been guaranteed anyway: balls, a decent hotel, and probably
Yeah,
first class flights home. Anyway, that's for sure. Anyway, if Roy
exactly,
took over.
100%.
But
No
yeah,
Ryanair.
yeah, like it's just mad when you think back at it. I just remember at the time. It's just the craziness of the nation about it as well. Like he was enemy number one. You know what I mean? And it's mad
Listen, it
as
was
well
front
because he
page
wasn't
news.
here as well. He was over in Manchester and just going
Yeah,
out walking his dogs.
the
And I'm going,
dog.
why are you going out walking the dogs? Like,
Yeah,
get over to the
it
World
was
Cup, will you?
mad.
You know?
Like
Yeah,
I said, front page. I was to say Joe Duffy's phone was off the off the scales
yeah,
back then as well.
yeah. And I remember Eamon Dunphy at the time. I remember Eamon Dunphy, like
Yeah,
this was absolute. This was the dessert for Eamon Dunphy
yeah,
because he loved going in on the FAI. It was absolutely brilliant.
yeah.
Like,
And
I think
listen,
I think
yeah,
was
like I
it
said,
shortly after that Eamon wrote his book as well, was it, or was it just before that?
it would have been after. Yeah, yeah. It would have
After
been
it,
a few
yeah, yeah.
years after.
And then funny enough, they'd have fallen out then. It's mad,
The
yeah.
Dunphy's still
Seriously,
there
mad.
about that. Is he still? Because I think did Roddy Doyle go goes right the second one. I think it was Roddy Doyle. Yeah,
I think it was, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
but yeah, no,
interesting. Just
Dunphy's still way better over that.
yeah, he wouldn't be a man that mends bridges, that's for sure. Like yeah,
Definitely not.
he's
Definitely
not a
not.
man that you go against. Well, listen, it was a pleasure having you on. Great reminiscing going back through it and
Thanks
stuff
for
like
having
that
me
and
on,
all.
cuz.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what the dynamic is between then and now and stuff like that. Obviously, you were much younger and stuff like that, but still, it was a
Yeah,
big deal. And I especially now from going to Vanillas, we always went to the Lansdowne
yeah,
games and stuff like that.
yeah,
If
yeah.
nothing more, we always got the half day, if nothing
Yeah,
else, anyway.
yeah. Because remember the games on a Wednesday afternoon at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, and you get down to Lansdowne, South Terrace,
Many,
Schoolboy.
many an evening I spent in that lake in UCD on a blown up banana. You don't have to tell
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Got into serious trouble down there with security guards on a number of times. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
remember
Crazy.
this will take you back because I remember being in St. Lawrence's, and I remember the qualifiers used to be on a Wednesday and a Friday afternoon sometimes. But
Yeah,
the day the qualifiers were on, I'd always have a dentist or a doctor appointment. The the teachers knew what the story is, but my
yeah.
dad used to bring me down, and he'd sneak me under the turnstile.
Oh,
You
deadly.
know, like giving his own take. I'll just go on
Yeah.
the third side. And we'd be on the terrace anyway, so it wasn't
Yeah,
if we
yeah.
were in the seats
Great.
or anything. But
Yeah.
listen, it used to be great crack.
It was mad in secondary. When we were in secondary, like the school used to organise the tickets for us. They used to encourage it. It was great. School would be empty on the Wednesday and the Friday afternoons for matches and stuff like that.
It's the way it should be, isn't it? Like, you know.
Absolutely. Great times, absolutely. Great times, great memories and stuff like that. And interesting to see the team and how it's doing now and stuff like that. Lots of youth coming through there now. Again, Stephen, similar to Mick, trying to get the team to play a brand of football and stuff like that as well. So
yeah, he was like even when he started, though, he was kind of thinking, Jesus, the results aren't coming. But even though the results weren't coming, you could see what he was trying to do. You could see he was trying to get them to play football. He's got an awful lot of young lads in there that have, you know, immense amount of talent. We're after getting CJ Hamilton's after declaring as well. He's a Blackpool midfielder, plays on the left hand side. He's obviously, as you know, I've watched him a hell of a lot. He's fantastic. I can't wait to see him put on the green jersey. You know, I was looking at the squad announcement today. Even the goalkeepers, goals. You look at Bazuma, Kelleher, Travers. Like them three are unbelievable. Mark Travers had a great season with Bournemouth. Kelleher, you know, when he's been asked to step up for Liverpool, he's been brilliant. And Bazuma's had a fantastic season with Portsmouth alone. He won't be with Portsmouth next season. Obviously, he's a City player on paper. He has to be playing the Premier League next season. There's no doubt about it. He has to be loaned out to a Premier League team. So there's a lot. You've got Troy Parrott, who's had a fantastic season with MK Dons as well. He'll go back to Spurs. He will be sent out on loan again, but hopefully he might get a loan to the Championship. So, but yeah, there's a squad full of young players there that can play football, and I'm excited about. I know we're playing Ukraine and Scotland now next month, so it'd be great to see what they can do in those two games.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see how they're developing as well with another number of months under the belt and stuff like that. And we wish them well because, as I said at the top of the show, like, you know, when the Irish team's doing well, the country seems to be doing well.
Yeah.
And it gives everyone a lift and stuff like that. And all,
exactly,
you know? Just one thing before we head off, we're both fathers. So obviously our thoughts and prayers go out today to that shooting in the US there.
Absolutely.
A number of kids have been killed in it, and I think a teacher as well, and a lot of people injured and stuff like that. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all those parents.
100%.
I can't even begin to imagine what they're going through and stuff like that. Just so sad. In 2022, that we live in a world where someone has a conviction that this is what they have to do and stuff like that. It's just
great.
And it seems rampant over there at the moment in the last couple of weeks. We've seen the supermarket one as well, and I believe there was a shooting at an Asian church or a mosque or something like that as well over there in California. So it's just terrible, you know, really, really bad. So thoughts and prayers go out to all those people. So I put in there at the end. Of course, if you want to contact us, the upper tier on YouTube, it's the upper tier podcast at gmail.com if you want to email us. If you have any interesting comments or stuff, you know, Mark's a referee. So if you want to hit him up with any bar questions or stuff like that, he's on those weeks. Taking the flack for the refs and stuff like that. It's been a long season.
With way.
We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, the upper tier. Audio version show always Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. And we will talk to you again real soon. Cheers, ref.
Cheers, cuz.